Good morning and welcome to Today in Putnam County, hosted by Putnam County Mayor Randy Porter, the show that takes a look at the events and what's happening all around Putnam County, as well as interviews with local, community, and business leaders. And now, sharing his insights and experience, here's Today in Putnam County with County Mayor Randy Porter.
Good day, and thanks for joining us this week for Today in Putnam County. I'm your host, County Mayor Randy Porter. Hope you're having a great weekend. Our show this week, it's going to be a great one. It's going to be a fun one. It's about the class of 1974 that graduated from the Cookeville High School. It's their 50th high school reunion for this group of people, and I have four of them with me today. Miss Shirley Pendley, Mr. Steve Leddy, Mr. Bill Gibson, and Mr. Danny Layne, all from the Cookeville High School graduating class of 1974. Thanks for joining us today, guys, and being on the show.
We're glad to be here.
Appreciate it.
Yes, we are.
So, 50 years. Does it seem possible for 50 years to have went by?
Some days I feel like I'm in my 60s, and some days I feel like I'm 7 years old again. So, yeah, it's possible.
We're always young in our minds, aren't we? It's just the bodies is the problem.
Yes, this group too, a theme with our planning. We've been planning this thing for almost a year now, and one recurring theme is how fast that time could, nobody can believe how fast that time got
50
away.
years went by.
But all in all, we're still a very young group.
Steve, y'all been planning your high school reunion. Tell us about that. You're going to be having that sometime in July?
Yes, sir. As a group, we've been actually working together on Zoom meetings since last August, about every 2 weeks. Back in that day, it was still called Putnam County Senior High School, by the way.
That's right.
Yeah. Didn't change till the early 80s.
That's right.
Back till Cookeville High School.
With the new school.
That's right.
When's your high school reunion coming up, Steve?
It's July the 20th, Saturday, July the 20th, and it's going to be located at Bilbrey's Crossing out in Rickman. The events will be scheduled from 5 till 10 p.m., those that can stay up that late. And
So, Danny, do you remember how many was in your graduating class?
No, I was near the bottom, so I think everything was
I think there were 320 of us.
there you go. That's about what I remember.
So, Danny, who was the smartest out of the bunch out of this four we've got here?
Oh, man, that's a tough one. The smart ones are always quiet. I hate to say that. Well, put me on the bottom and work your way up. The smart ones are represented on the group, too, that we've been meeting with. We got the class president, so can't get much better than that.
Yeah, we've got President Bob Stout, and I think he's the brains of the operation.
So, out of the 320 or so that you thought you had in your graduating class, how many do you think you're going to be expecting coming to your reunion? Do you know?
I think we're getting towards the 150 mark.
Wow, so almost half of what? So that's pretty good. So out of us reminiscing about 1974 and y'all reminiscing about your high school years, I'm going to throw some trivia in and see if y'all remember some of the things that were happening back in 1974. So the top news story in 1974, does anybody know what that was?
In 74?
I would say it was Watergate.
No, 73 was when the resignation came, right?
It was. 74. Well, actually, in 74, that was the top news story was Richard Nixon and Watergate and him resigning and us having a new president coming in. So y'all got it close.
I was so busy studying and whatnot with my schoolwork, I didn't watch the news a lot back then.
You mean you didn't have teachers who let you watch television at lunchtime and we could watch the trial?
I remember that. I'm just a few years younger than y'all are, not many, but I remember us being able to watch that, and we had TVs in the classroom that you were able to watch Watergate and the trial. That was the Gerald Ford became the 38th president after Mr. Nixon resigned. So probably the most thing that changed our lives the most happened in 74. Does anybody remember what that was? If you drove a car back in 74.
Oh, the gas price.
No, gas price is one of them.
Is it seatbelts became mandatory?
They moved that blinker from the floor up to the steering wheel.
Y'all are all hitting really good ones, but it was one that we all hated. They dropped the speed limit to 55 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Remember that? We were on the interstates and we used to drive 70, and then all of a sudden the shortage with the gas and oil and everything, and they dropped the speed limit nationwide down to 55. It's almost like you had to keep the brakes on as you were driving going down the interstate. Hey, we're talking to some of the classmates today of the 1974 graduating class of the Putnam County High School back before it changed to the Cookeville High School. And we're reminiscing about things that have changed in the last 50 years, and they're about to have their high school reunion coming up in July. So, Shirley, I'll start with you. What's your favorite memory of high school?
I remember it was sort of developing a sense of autonomy. You were changing from being, just people who sat and listened. You were starting to really think on your own and starting to make decisions about your future, whether that future was college or, trade schools or anything, just what your future would hold for you.
Bill, what's your favorite memory? I know were you a big cut up back then like you are now?
I was trouble looking for a place to happen back then. Danny asked us about the technology, and we talked about a lot of things, that we have now, technology-wise, that we did not have back then. But Mr. Bob Holloway was our principal. And he had some kind of technology where he always knew.
He knew everything, didn't he?
He knew when I wasn't where I was supposed to be.
He was omnipotent.
Especially if I had left the campus for any reason, like to get some lunch. He was excellent at catching me.
Steve, you got a favorite memory?
Oh, goodness, there's many. I think, some of the teachers that I've thought all through these years. I remember Miss Valley Hunter, which she was from our sophomore year, English teacher there many, many years. Miss Georgia Hargis.
Oh, yeah, Miss Georgia.
Oh, gosh, we had what called Mom's Bunch there. A lot of them were the football players because Bob Hargis was our football coach during that time period, too. But there's so many friendships that have started there and still endure to this day. Are things that I remember for sure.
Danny, what about you? You got a favorite memory?
Oh, there were a bunch of them. I think when we first got out there, because we had junior high, so we went 7th, 8th, and 9th grade to the old high school, then with the old high school, and then you did 10th, 11th, and Putnam County Senior High School. But when we got out there, Colonel Norwood retired, and I thought that was great, but then I found out he had been replaced by Corporal Punishment.
We heard you were the comedian of the bunch, Danny, so I'm going to agree already, but that was really good.
Remember got Colonel Norwood and Captain Bob, remember?
And Gertis Carr was Corporal Punishment.
Oh, Coach Carr.
Sure.
Wow. I didn't go to school in Putnam County, but I've known Coach Carr for a long time. And Danny, folks might be interested in knowing your dad was Frank Layne, sports in Putnam County for many years. And so you go back to a great family. So I'm going to go back to you, Shirley. In 50 years, looking at society and everything, what in your opinion has changed the most? Is there one thing that sticks out in your mind?
I think probably sort of a loss of innocence in society. I just think that sometimes high schoolers probably don't have that experience that we had. Their experiences are different. Their history is different. I think of all the history that they have to study now that we would think we were, the ultimate history. I just am in awe of what they can do, and especially like in the sciences. I remember when my daughter was coming to start to high school, they were just breaking the genetic code and how that's just accelerated so much of what we can do now in terms of medicine and research. So
kids are so much smarter today, aren't they? I mean, it's amazing what technology has come about and what's changed. Hey, we got to take a break. We are talking with the high school class, Putnam County High School class of 1974. 50-year reunion coming up from them. We're reminiscing with four of those folks. We're going to talk more with them after we take this quick break. Stay with us.
And now back to Today in Putnam County, hosted by Putnam County Mayor Randy Porter.
Welcome back to Today in Putnam County. I'm your host, County Mayor Randy Porter. Hope you're having a great weekend. Our show this week, it's about the class of the Putnam County High School from back in 1974. They're having their 50th high school reunion coming up, and I got 4 of those classmates with me today talking about and reminiscing what it was like 50 years ago in high school. Miss Shirley Pendley, Mr. Steve Leddy, Mr. Bill Gibson, and Mr. Danny Layne is joining us by telephone all the way from Michigan. Guys, we've been talking about some of the things, reminiscing what it was like in high school back then. Well, let's talk about the changes in Cookeville. So you go all the way back to 1974. You're graduating from high school. I moved here in 79, I believe it was, to go to Tech, and I know all of the changes that we've seen. Isn't it amazing at how much Cookeville has grown and changed? And Steve, I'll talk with you. I mean, you've been in the insurance business, recently retired, been in the insurance business for all those years. I mean, you saw it probably as much as anybody. It's hard to believe, isn't it?
I can remember when my father, we moved here from Memphis in 1968, and my father was an engineering professor at Tech, and they put us in the Holiday Inn, and the Thunderbird was the only thing there, from there to the stockyards.
Yeah.
And most of it was just farmland all the way across, all the way up. And man, it's just changed so much over the years, for sure.
Bill, you came out and went to work for the police department at some point. I started at EMS in 79, and you were a city police officer then. You really patrolling and seeing the changes. I mean, where Kroger and all that stuff is today was just farmland, and there wasn't a whole lot between there and the interstate, was there?
There wasn't, and I worked in high school at that Holiday Inn. Steve was talking about, and it was thought to be way out in the country.
It was, and that was with a lot of the historical photos that I have of Cookeville, Putnam County. That was the place to have the events. That was that Holiday Inn.
Oh yeah,
and you just didn't have a whole lot more.
Where I go to church at Jefferson Avenue Church of Christ, we have a framed letter from Judge John Mitchell, if you go back that far, and he was an elder at the old Broad Street Church downtown, and he was against building that church all the way out in the country out there, which is right south of Kroger's now. But he put in the letter, but for the sake of unity, I'll go along with it.
And now look, that's in the middle of town. Is what we consider.
And it just keeps rolling.
It just keeps rolling. Danny, when did you move from Cookeville? When did you move out?
I left in 76, so like 2 years after graduation, I joined the Marine Corps and never really got to go back. So my visits have been short, coming back to see family. And so I've gradually watched the changes, but all my landmarks are either taken down or covered up. So it's kind of hard to get around.
We were talking the other day about the landmarks we used to use, Bill, in going on emergency calls, because you didn't have street addresses back then. And
didn't have GPS.
No, Coal Store and the big oak tree. and
Party lines.
Yeah, Shoney's.
Big K.
Hey, party lines.
Yeah.
So I was thinking back, that's a good one. I know we live on a farm in Macon County, but we had, I think, 4 or 5 families on the same phone line. Did y'all go through that same thing?
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we had the Johnsons across the street, and both families had teenage kids, and they would pick at each other on the party line.
Don't you remember somebody call and everybody pick up, and then you figure out who it is, and then you hope you heard everybody hang up, but a lot of times some of the other parties didn't hang up, did they?
No.
That's
we got once they changed to the single lines, my folks had the same phone number when they came to live with me like 3.5 years ago, and we terminated their phone number. The guy said, "You've had it 664. Don't you want to keep it?" I thought it was probably wore out, and they could just give it to somebody else.
That's pretty good. So let's do some more trivia. I was looking back. Anybody have an idea how much eggs were a dozen back then?
Probably 50 cents. I don't know.
You're close. 58 cents for a dozen of eggs back then. A half gallon of ice cream was 79 cents. A gallon of milk was $1.39, and you could buy 6 cans of Pepsi Cola. You got them in the 6-pack back then for 88 cents. And you think about
you could use those pull tabs too to make a little string.
Oh yeah.
That's a good one. Does anybody remember what the top TV show was in 1974?
Was it Archie?
You got it,
wow.
Shirley. All in the Family. It's the top TV show, Archie, and then Sanford and Son, Chico and the Man, The Jeffersons, and MASH.
I knew MASH had to be in there.
Yeah, I remember watching MASH. I'm sure y'all did. That was the top 5 TV shows back then.
You think we have memory loss?
Maybe.
That and memory loss.
Yeah. We're talking with 4 members of the 1974 graduating class of the Putnam County High School. We're reminiscing about the 50 years that's gone by and some of their favorite memories and how things have changed when we start thinking about that. Probably, Shirley, technology is probably the number one change, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think kids this age, my brother was asking in front of his granddaughter, well, how do you get an app on this phone? And she was like 8 years old. She said, Papa, you don't know how to do an app? Here, let me have your phone. I'll show you. And he said, kids that age just automatically know it. They're not afraid of the computer. They're not afraid of the phone. And sit us sometimes in front of it, and it's like, oh no, I'm going to tear this up. And we're bigger than that computer or that phone.
We are. It's been a big change. Bill, do you remember when you got your first cell phone?
I remember the first cell phone I had was huge.
Yeah,
it was a big book, and it had an antenna that popped out and actually had a receiver and a wire. And I think it cost about $1.40 a minute to talk on it. So you didn't talk on it much.
I think the first cellular company we had here was Sailor One, best I recollect, that wound up going into Verizon, but that was the first cell phone. Steve, I think about you in the insurance business. I mean, you saw a huge change computer-wise, right?
Oh, goodness, yes. The Radio Shack was the first computer. I can remember well my first boss saying, I've never spent more money for something I understand the least.
Yeah.
Had the floppy disks.
Yes.
And we still had copy machines that were on rolls of heated paper kind of thing, and used carbon paper.
Yeah.
Carbon paper, mimeograph. Yeah, that was all in early 80s when I started.
Yeah, and fax machines. You remember fax machine came along?
We thought that was the most wonderful thing in the world.
Oh, yeah, to be able to dial a phone number and send a page across the city or the county or across states. That technology, I agree, is probably one of the biggest changes. Danny, what was your line of work once you graduated high school? What did you do? You went in the military, but what happened after that?
I was in a newspaper man. Like my father before me, and I spent 10 years in the Marines as working for newspapers and magazines. And the technology changed because when I first went in, I had to carry all my Marine gear, your ammo, and bag, and then I had a camera bag and had to carry a typewriter, paper for the typewriter. So by the time I got where I was going, I was pretty tired. Today, those guys carry a cell phone. It's got like all of it in there.
Well, the newspaper business probably changed as much as anything, had it, Danny? I mean, we all used to look forward to getting that newspaper to see what the news was, other than probably WHUB radio here. You didn't have a lot of radio stations, but you got that newspaper, I guess, 6 days a week, Monday through Friday, and then Sunday. But that's totally changed now, hasn't it, Danny?
Yeah, it has changed a little bit. Don't downplay WHUB's involvement. Gene Davidson back in the day was a big sportscast, first Little League team.
Yeah.
So, hey, they're part of my life, too, even though I'm not around there.
Yeah.
But
Eldon
technology
and Gene,
for me has been good because I work at Michigan State University, and I'm able to stay current with it.
Well, that's great. And yeah, WHUB being the first radio station that we had here, the one big thing, well, two things I remember about WHUB, and you probably did too. Back then, two-way radios between the emergency responders was just almost unheard of. And WHUB used to announce where the fire was when the Cookeville Fire Department went out.
So the first time I ever heard of the Leg Insurance Agency was the commercial that would come on and say, instead of following the fire trucks to the fire, here's the location of the fire first.
Yes.
Instead of following and go to 317 West Spring and think about your home insurance. That's the first I'd ever heard of that when I was growing up as a kid. And then I ended up working for them.
And you wound up working for them.
Yeah.
That is great.
Hey, one of the great things, Randy, about technology, though, now is for the last at least 10 or 15 years, we've had a class website for the class of 74, and there is so much information. As we as a committee have been going through this, we found still a lot of our classmates don't realize we even have it, or we're finding it's been 10 years since they've even updated anything, and their emails are out of date. And so we want to encourage all of our classmates to go, first of all, find it, get in there, and if you need, Shirley can help them get in if they can't get in there. She's an administrator. You want to tell them how to get to it?
Well, I don't have the address memorized for it, but I can certainly get it to you if you need that.
ClassCreator.com?
Yes, it's ClassCreator.com, and then the www
you look
part.
for 1974 PCSHS, I guess.
Yes. And it has the hyphens and everything in between. I think another thing we need to remember to remind people, since most of us are retirement age, a lot of the people who had their email addresses in there, those were linked to their work.
Right.
So those are accounts that they're not able to access, so we need the updated.
So if you are a member of the graduating class, Putnam County High School of 1974, go to classcreator.com and find that and reconnect with these folks, because coming up on July 20th, you're about to have your 50th class reunion. Now, we got to take a quick break. You're listening to Today in Putnam County. We're reminiscing with 4 of the students from the graduating class of 1974. More with them. Stay with us.
And now, back to Today in Putnam County, hosted by Putnam County Mayor Randy Porter.
Welcome back to Today in Putnam County. I'm your host, County Mayor Randy Porter. This week's show is all about the graduating class from the Putnam County High School of 1974. They are about to celebrate their 50th reunion, and I've got 4 of them with me today. My guests this week are Miss Shirley Pendley, Mr. Steve Leddy, Mr. Bill Gibson, and joining us by phone out of Michigan is Mr. Danny Layne. They're all members of that graduating class. Shirley, you kind of keep up with where everyone from that class kind of moved out to. Kind of give us a breakdown of the states and the places that a lot of your folks have moved to.
We're far-reaching across the United States. There are, of course, southern states represented like Alabama, Georgia, Kentucky, Louisiana. And then we have people that are in California, Missouri, Louisiana, Michigan, Minnesota, Mississippi, North Carolina, Ohio, Oklahoma. We have 169 living in Tennessee, Texas, Wisconsin, New Brunswick, 1 in Uruguay, and we have 42 deceased.
Wow, and so you got almost half your graduating class still lives in Tennessee. Steve, we were talking about something during the break that you do not have at the schools anymore.
Oh, yeah.
What were we talking about? What was that?
Well, back in that day, there was a smoking area that was, we're talking about what's now Avery Trace. It was a high school at that time. And so across the road right now, which is where the YMCA is, there was a smoking area. And you were supposed to have a permission slip from your parents to go over there, but that was quite doubtful that some did, or might have had a few friends help sign a few of those or something of that nature. It wasn't
patrolled very much.
Yeah, it wasn't. But that was a different day and time sure.
It was. We've now we've moved to vaping, hadn't we, Bill? You even got it on your shirt today. That's one of the big, almost crisis maybe we're talking about with young kids vaping.
Escape
now, right?
the vape. It's become quite a issue and quite a problem for the young people.
I often wonder if detention has changed at all.
Yeah, I don't think punishment is the same as it was back then, is it, Danny?
Well, the corporal punishment part of it's gone.
Maybe we need to bring that back. Maybe that would help. I don't know. But times have changed. Steve, you were talking about how the schools merged.
So in addition to, like Bill said, a lot of us came from different elementary schools into Cookeville Junior High, and then came up, that was at that time, that was 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. We didn't come till the senior high till 10th, 11th, and 12th. So also in our immediate area was the Allgood Junior High School, the old Allgood School, which is White Plains now. And so we've got a whole group of new friends that came into us in the 10th grade there as well.
So it's things have merged together. A little trivia, do you remember what the worst thing probably that happened in 1974 to Putnam County?
The tornado.
Tornadoes, that's right. 148 of them struck 13 states. We lost several people here in
April.
If we had, of course, then in 2020, we had the tornado here basically almost 50 years later. That was probably the worst disaster that happened. I was looking at some of these other stats. The median household income back then was $11,000. We were all poor. We just didn't know it, did we? I mean, that's kind of the way it was.
Oh, I knew.
You could get more out of a dollar, though.
Yeah, the average price for a new car was $4,440. That's to look at what we're paying for vehicles today. I mean, it's amazing. People magazine premiered in 1974. That was the first issue, came out in 74. Anybody want to guess what the number one song in 1974 was? Barbra Streisand?
The Way We Were?
The Way We Were.
Wow.
Yeah, you remember the movie that came out, and that was the number one song.
Robert Redford.
Yep. The World Trade Center opened for business in 1974. It was the tallest in the world, 110 stories. Of course, that's no longer true. We was talking about some of the prices. Bread back then was 24 cents a loaf. Chicken was 49 cents a pound. Eggs was 58 cents a dozen. And we talked about Pepsi and milk and some of those things. So a lot of the prices have definitely changed today from what it was back then. Steve, talk about, once again, your high school reunion in case there's folks listening.
Sure. We have kind of a soft deadline of June 30th, and this Sunday, I guess, for registration. But if there's still a few hanging out there that didn't realize that or know it, we'll still find a way to get you in if we can get you at least within the next week or so, because we got to let caterers know and things of that nature. We're going to have some heavy hors d'oeuvres, not a full sit-down dinner or anything, but there's going to be music, and there'll be just a good time out there to reconnect, I think, more than anything.
July 20th at Bilberry Crossing.
Bilberry Crossing, yes. And do we want to give them a way to get a hold of anybody?
Sure.
Don't you go ahead.
If you need any information in more detail, you can call 931-319-5970.
So if you're looking to come to the high school reunion, I'm sure they'd love to have everyone get back together and reminisce. I mean, a lot of you probably have not saw each other in maybe years, and that's your chance to come back.
Go in that website and update your profile. People want to know you're still kicking.
That's right, and that is classcreator.com. You can go to it and search for the class of 74. Bill, do you remember what your prom theme song was?
So I didn't go to the prom because I couldn't get a date.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
I think their theme was "We May Never Pass This Way Again."
Do you remember the group that sang that song?
Yes, it was Seals and Crofts.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And Shirley's going to sing a few bars.
Yeah.
But we're hoping, we've kind of talked about that in light of 50 years passing, and it has a different meaning now. It just makes us realize that it's important to take time to get together and do the important things in life, because it really does go by fast.
You know, the Bible talks about life being like a vapor. I don't think we realize that in our young years and when we're in high school and our young years, but as we get older, that becomes very prevalent, doesn't it?
It sure does.
It's just unbelievable how fast it goes. Hey, Danny, you were talking about one of your favorite places to eat is no longer there. It's right beside the junior high school. What was the name of that restaurant?
That was the Burger Chef.
Burger Chef.
Fine dining.
Yeah, if you could get out at lunch, you could go down there.
They had the mushroom burger and the Top Chef. You remember all those?
Good stuff.
I remember you could take the ketchup packets and put them under somebody's tire, and when they backed up, it exploded.
That was the worst thing we did.
I'm guessing you were the trickster back then, Danny, were you?
Well, I was in training. I think I hit my peak in high school.
Well, it has been great having y'all with us today on the show. Y'all have, it's just been a fun time laughing and reminiscing about 50 years ago. And I hope y'all have a great school reunion with your graduating class of 74. And thanks for being on the show. Miss Shirley Pendley, Mr. Steve Leddy, Mr. Bill Gibson, and Mr. Danny Layne on the phone with us from Michigan. I wish you the best, and thanks for being here. And hopefully we'll come back in 60 years. How
there
about
you go.
we do another show if we're all still around, and do another show? How
Come in
about
on
that?
my walker.
Mayor Porter, we sure do appreciate
Yes,
you.
thank you, Randy.
Thank you for having
You
us.
do a great job for our whole county.
Well, thank you, and it's been a joy to have y'all on the show. That's our show for this week. Hope you join us every weekend for Today in Putnam County. I'm County Mayor Randy Porter, hoping you have a great rest of your weekend, and may God continue to bless our great county.
You've been listening to Today in Putnam County, hosted by Putnam County Mayor Randy Porter.